Okay, so we're going to build on what we already know, and then we're going to step it up. So if I get 6x minus 5y equals 11, and 2x plus y equals 1, and I want to solve this by elimination. Remember, I can do anything I want, but I'm going to eliminate the x because it's easier for my brain. I get 6x minus 5y equals 11, negative 6x minus 3y equals negative 3. Add them, negative 8y equals negative 8. Equals positive 8, and then y equals negative 1. Now, how do I get my x? I take the negative 1, plug it in for y. So 2x equals 2, x equals 1. So we know our answer is 1, negative 1. That's not anything different, okay? But we're going to do something. We're going to solve using matrices. Matrices are going to be a completely different thing. If you continue on with math, this is something that you will continue to do. And it's definitely a workout. It's one of those things where when you first started, it's kind of weird. But I promise you'll get used to it. And it's a little bit of a puzzle, and some of us hate it, some of us love it, some of us could take it or leave it. Okay? So the goal is for it to look like this. 1, 0, 0, 1. And that means we're done. And whatever that top number is would be your x. And whatever that bottom number is would be your y. So, excuse me. What I'm going to do is I see the 6, the negative 5, and 11. And then I'm taking the leading coefficients of 2, 1, and 1. Okay? So there's different ways that I can do this problem. What I like about this problem is that, see how, look at that, there's a 1 already there. So that means I like that. I'm going to keep that there. So then my goal then is to make that a 0. Okay. And actually, so that's one way to do it. So one way to do it is, how would I make this a 0? I'd be dealing with fractions actually, so I'm going to flip it. And for right now, just kind of go, sounds good. You just kind of want to get used to it. And there isn't one way to do this, okay? So I am a methodical person, so I like going 1, then the 0, then the 0, then the 1. And then when I get really good at it, then it's not a big deal. So let me see if I can find that green pen, because it's going to be really useful. I know that if I took the first row, and these are things you're going to write, if I took the first row and I divided it by 2, then 2 divided by 2 is 1. That gives me the 1. So I'm going to go like this, and you're going to go row 1 divided by 2. You're not doing anything to row 2, okay? So you're going to go 1 divided by 2 divided by 2. I get it. It's fractions. We'll be okay. And I didn't do anything to the second row, okay? So that is my new matrices right now. Now I got the 1 done. Now I want to get the 0. The way that I could get the 0 is I could go negative 6 times the first row and then add it to the second row. Now, I'm not actually going to change the first row. I'm just going to use it to help me get the second one. So the first row does not change. But if I went negative 6 times this is negative 6, plus the second row, there's my 0. If I go negative 6 times a half, that's negative 3. Minus 5 is negative 8. And then if I go negative 6 times a half, that's negative 3, plus 11 is 8. Does anybody notice anything interesting here? Interesting, huh? Okay, so I got my 1 and I got my 0. Now I look here, I know that if I just take the second row, and some of you are like, how do you know what to do? It'll take some getting used to. So just for right now, it's like, I'm going to take the second row, and if I divide it by negative 8, that would turn into a 1. Which means I'm not doing anything to the first row again. The first row is fine. So I keep it. So 0 divided by anything is 0. That's the whole point. If you change these 1s and 0s, you've backtracked. Negative 8 divided by negative 8 is 1. And 8 divided by negative 8 is negative 1. I actually know the y value. I know the y value is negative 1. And if you look over here, look at that. Okay? So now I've gotten the 1, the 0, and the 1. Now, all that I have to do is change this to a 0, and then I'll figure out the y value. So if I took negative 1/2 times the second row and added it to the first row, I would get the answer. You'll start noticing, you see what we do? You do the opposite, and then you add it to the other one. It's kind of like what you're doing here, right? You did the opposite, and then you added it to this, and it went away. It'll take some getting used to. So remember, the second row is exactly the way it's supposed to be. I'm only changing one row at a time. I am not that cool that I can do more than one row at a time. If I did this, the 1 should stay, right? Because I did -1/2 times this is 0, plus 1 is still 1. -1/2 times the second row is, oh my gosh, -1/2 plus 1/2 is 0. Ah, there's my 0. If I go -1/2 times -1, that's 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1. And look, there's my x, there's my y. We'll do practice, okay? All right, let's look at this one. I'm going to solve this one by elimination. This has got to be no big deal. So I noticed that if I multiply the first equation by -1, that'll turn into 3x plus 2y equals -2. 12x, 7x, multiplying because we're human, equals 14, x equals 2. Now that I got my x, I'll take that, plug it into my original. 4 times 2 minus 2y equals 16. 8 minus 2y equals 16. I end up with -2y equals 8. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You can't see any of that. And then I get y equals -4. So I know my answer will be 2, -4. Okay? How do I know for sure? I can graph it on Desmos. I can check it. Let's hope I'm right. So now I'm going to solve this matrices here. Okay? And so I'm going to use, and I'm going to do the even one. I'm going to do the bigger one on top because I think it'll be easier for my brain. Okay? So that's my original matrices. My goal is to make that a 1. So here's a little hint. When you're trying to get to 1, you're going to be dividing. When you're going to be dividing that equation. If you're trying to get to a 0, you're going to multiply by a row and then add it to the other row. Okay? So I just go methodically. If you want to do it differently, that's great for you, but this is what works for me. If I take the first row and I divide it by 4, then that would be a 1. I got my 1. Now remember, I'm not doing anything to the second equation, so it stays. And I'm not saying my way is the best. This is what works for me. If you take -2 over 4, that's -1/2. And 16 divided by 4 is 4. All right, I got my 1 because I divided. Now I want to get my 0, so I'm going to multiply one of them and then add it to the other one. So who is not going to change? The 1, the -1/2, and the 4. And my goal is to get that 0, okay? So if I went 3 times the first row and added it to the second row, I would get 0, because what's the opposite of -3? 3. So 3 times the first row is 3, plus -3, 0. Ah, I got my 0. 3 times the first row is -3/2. Minus 2. So if you're not sure, you just pick up your little calculator. Just so you can see, because this is going to get more difficult. So you're going -3 divided by 2, and then minus 2. And it gives you -3.5, or let's keep it in fraction form, -7/2. Okay? So -7/2. And then now 3 times the first row is 12, plus 2 is 14. All right, I've gotten the 1, I've gotten the 0. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to get the 1. So then how do I get the 1? I divide it. So now how am I going to get the 1? I'm going to take the second row and I'm going to divide it by -7/2, which is the same thing as multiplying by -2/7. And some of you go, what? Well, just use your calculator, okay? Now, if I'm going to, and I'm okay with that, that's okay. This is intimidating. The first row doesn't change. The 0 better not change. Well, when you divide anything by 0, it should be 0. If I go negative 7 halves divided by negative 7 halves, that's 1. Aha, I got my 1. Then if I'm going to go 14 divided by negative 7 halves, I'm just going to show you the work, because some of you can do it in your head. You get negative 4. Okay? If you're not sure, you'll take this and put it in your calculator. Now look at that. I'm at the 0, 1. I got my y value. It's negative 4. Look at that. I know how to multiply and divide. So now the only thing left to do is to make that a 0. So what do? I multiply one of the rows by something and add it to the other row. So who doesn't change? The second row. Okay? So this better not change or we're in trouble. Okay. So if I went negative 1/2, positive 1/2 to the second row and added it to the first row, I would get my answer. So how do you know which one to do? Whatever one you're trying to find, that's the one that goes last. So 1/2 times the second row is 1/2 minus 1/2 is 0. Cool. 1/2 times the second row is negative 2 plus 4 is 2. And look at that. There's my 2, negative 4. I'm going to do the other ones in the next video because this took a while.